In 1962, a small town in Pennsylvania lit a fire to clean a garbage dump. Standard practice, done 1,000 times in 1,000 towns across America. You light it, it burns, it goes out, problem solved. This fire did not go out. It has been burning for 63 years. It is burning right now somewhere between 300 and 900 feet beneath the ground, moving through coal seams that nobody has fully mapped, in a direction nobody can fully predict. The government spent millions trying to stop it. They couldn't. They bought out almost every resident and demolished almost every building. They closed the roads. They rerouted the highway. They removed the town from most official maps. And still, a small group of people refused to leave. This is Centralia, Pennsylvania. And this is the full story of how one garbage fire became the most unstoppable disaster in American history. What Centralia was. Before the fire, Centralia was exactly the kind of town that built America and never got credit for it. Columbia County, Pennsylvania. Anthracite coal country. The kind of region where the ground beneath your feet was worth more than anything growing on top of it. Centralia was founded in 1866, incorporated as a borough in 1872, and built entirely around the coal beneath it. At its peak in the early 20th century, it had over 2,700 residents. It had churches, 7 of them serving different immigrant communities: Irish, Welsh, Ukrainian, Lithuanian, Slovak, because the coal mines pulled workers from across Europe and they brought their faiths with them. It had a main street with shops, a post office, a hotel, and a community center. Children grew up there, went to school there, assumed they would raise their own children there. The coal seams beneath Centralia were part of the same geological formation that ran through most of eastern Pennsylvania. Anthracite, the hardest and most energy-dense form of coal, the fuel that powered American industry through the 19th century and into the 20th. The mines ran deep, the tunnels went everywhere. By the time the last active mines closed in the mid-20th century, the ground beneath Centralia was more tunnel than earth. Nobody thought much about that. Why would they? The mines were closed. The coal was gone. What could happen? The day they lit the fire, May 27, 1962. The Centralia Town Council hired workers to clean the landfill at the edge of town, an old strip mine pit that had been used as a garbage dump for years. Standard municipal housekeeping. The accepted method at the time was to burn the trash, let it reduce to ash, and move on. The workers lit the fire. What nobody knew, or nobody had checked carefully enough to know, was that the pit was connected to an exposed coal seam. The trash fire reached the seam caught, and unlike trash, which burns itself out, coal does not need oxygen from the surface to keep burning. It makes its own heat. It moves through the earth following the seam, finding new fuel constantly. The fire went underground. The borough tried to extinguish it. They pumped water in. The fire moved around the water. They tried excavation, digging out the burning material. The trenches filled with poisonous gas before workers could get deep enough. The fire moved laterally while they dug vertically. The state got involved, then the Federal Office of Surface Mining. Each attempt cost money. Each attempt failed. The fire moved deeper, spread wider, and became harder to track. By the 1970s, it had been burning for over a decade, and Centralia was still a functioning town, still over 1,000 residents, still trying to believe the problem was manageable. It was not manageable, what the fire did to the people. For years, the fire was an abstraction, something happening underground, somewhere out there, being handled by someone. Then it started coming up. Carbon monoxide began seeping into basements. Residents installed gas detectors that went off in the middle of the night. One family woke to find their detector screaming at 4 a.m. Carbon monoxide levels in their basement high enough to kill. Another family's basement measured temperatures above 180 degrees. The ground above the fire was warm to the touch in winter. Snow melted in specific patterns, tracing the path of the fire below like a map. Then came February 14, 1981. A 12-year-old boy named Todd Domboski was walking in his grandmother's backyard. The ground opened beneath him. A sinkhole, created by the fire burning away the earth below, swallowed him instantly. He dropped 150 feet into a steaming pit, carbon monoxide and sulfur dioxide billowing up around him. He grabbed a tree root on the way down and held on. His cousin heard him screaming and pulled him out. Todd Domboski survived, but the image of a child disappearing into his grandmother's yard, into a hole that opened from nowhere with poison gas rising from below, that image ended the debate about whether Centralia was still livable. Congress allocated $42 million for voluntary relocation in 1983. Most families took the offer. They packed their lives into moving trucks and left houses their grandparents had built. Most, not all. The ones who stayed at the peak of Centralia, over 1,000 people lived there. After the buyout, a small group refused to leave. Some were elderly and had no concept of life anywhere else. Some believed the government was exaggerating the danger to acquire the land cheaply. Some simply would not be moved from homes they had lived in for 50 years. Some had reasons they never fully explained to anyone. The government tried everything short of physical removal. They condemned the properties. They demolished the buildings of those who left, block by block, until the streets were mostly empty lots. They reroaded Pennsylvania Route 61, the main highway through town, because the road was cracking and buckling from the heat and subsidence below. They posted warning signs. They released reports. They made the case repeatedly that staying was dangerous. The holdouts remained. In 1992, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania condemned all properties in Centralia and began eminent domain proceedings. Most remaining residents accepted. A small group sued. They fought in court for years. In 2013, after decades of legal battle, a settlement was reached. The remaining residents, at that point fewer than 10, were allowed to stay in their homes for the rest of their lives. When they die, the properties revert to the state. Today, approximately 5 people live in Centralia. 5 people in a borough that once had nearly 3,000. They have mail delivery. They pay taxes. Centralia is still technically an incorporated borough. It has a zip code. It has a government such as it is. It holds elections. It just doesn't have anyone to govern. What Centralia looks like now. If you drive to Centralia today, the first thing you notice is the grid. The streets are still there. The curbs, the fire hydrants, the street signs, the infrastructure of a town laid out in orderly blocks, all of it intact, and almost all of it leading to empty lots where houses used to stand. Here and there a house remains occupied with a car in the driveway and curtains in the windows, and then an empty lot, and then another empty lot, and then a street sign pointing to an intersection that holds nothing on any corner. The old Route 61 is the most visited spot. The government closed it in 1994 when the buckle and crack of the pavement became a safety hazard. Today it is a dead road, a full highway with painted lines and guardrails that leads nowhere. Its surface broken into waves and fissures, cracks venting thin streams of steam on cold mornings. People come from all over to walk it. They stand on a highway that was officially closed 30 years ago and look at the cracks and the steam and the way the road curves and drops like something pushed it from below because something did. The cemetery is still maintained. Flowers on the graves, grass trimmed. The dead of Centralia are better kept than most of the living towns around them, and the hillsides above the old mining areas show patches of dead vegetation. Zones where the heat below has killed the root systems from underneath. In winter, you can see exactly where the fire is running by watching where the snow doesn't stick. The fire moves, slowly, but it moves. The numbers. Here is what 63 years of underground fire looks like in data. The Centralia fire has burned through an estimated 8 million tons of coal since 1962. At current rates, geologists estimate there is enough coal remaining in the seam to keep the fire burning for another 250 years. The fire covers an area of approximately 400 acres underground. It burns at temperatures between 350 and 900 degrees Fahrenheit at its hottest points. The federal and state governments have spent an estimated $60 million attempting to extinguish or contain the fire. Every major attempt failed. The current official plan for the Centralia fire is no plan. The fire is considered inextinguishable by any cost-effective method. The official position is containment monitoring, watching to ensure it doesn't spread toward neighboring communities, and waiting for 250 years of coal to burn. Why it matters. Centralia is not unique in the fact of an underground coal fire. There are coal fires burning on every continent except Antarctica. India alone has over 100 active underground coal fires. China has fires that have been burning for centuries. What makes Centralia different is the documentation, the living memory, the fact that Americans watched in real time over decades as a government failed to solve a problem it created through neglect and solved instead by removing the people. The town didn't burn, it emptied. The fire is underground and invisible. What's visible is the absence. The streets without houses, the highway without traffic, the zip code without residents. And the 5 people still there, living in a borough the government has been trying to close for 40 years, on streets where their neighbors used to be, above a fire that will outlast every single one of them by centuries. They stayed because it was home. The government called that irrational. Maybe it was. But there is something in the image of a person living on a street of empty lots, in a house the state wants back, above a fire that has been burning since 1962, something that is not irrational at all, something that looks like refusing to let a place die just because everything around it already has. One garbage fire, one moment of routine municipal maintenance on a May afternoon in 1962, 63 years of burning. $42 million spent, an entire town emptied, demolished block by block, erased from most maps, reduced from 3,000 people to 5, and the fire still going, right now, tonight, moving through the coal seams beneath what used to be Centralia, Pennsylvania, at temperatures that would melt aluminum. With 250 years of fuel left to burn, the town is almost gone. The fire is nowhere near done. Drop a comment below. Did you know about Centralia before this video? And tell me, would you have stayed or would you have taken the buyout? Subscribe. New story every single week. And next week we go to a town that didn't burn, it drowned, and it keeps coming back.